Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is a knitting tutorial and just like I did with my previous knitting tutorial, I'm going to put all of the timestamps in. You can now do like chapters on YouTube, so if you just look down at the bottom of this video then you can see all of the chapters, so you can skip to different bits if you want to. So today I'm going to be showing you how to make a bobble hat. I'll leave a link below to the pattern which I use. However, I have kind of changed it a bit because the pattern is for smaller needles and smaller wool. I prefer to use chunky needles and chunky wool, so I have adapted the pattern slightly so it's less stitches and it's also a bit smaller anyway. So yes, you can go down below to the link to see how many stitches they did and what kind of needles they did, and you can just use whatever you want. But other than the number of stitches and the size that I do the hat, like the length of the hat, everything else is exactly the same. So for this you are going to need 10mm knitting needles, some chunky wool, scissors, a tapestry needle, a pom-pom maker and some stitch markers, and I will leave links to everything that I'm using in this video below, so yeah, you can go down there. And you just want to start off your hat by casting on 46 stitches. So I've already casted on the 46 stitches, so I will leave a link in the description to a couple of different videos that show you how to cast on if you're not 100% clear on how to do that. Now we're going to start knitting. For this pattern we are going to be doing a form of rib stitch where we purl 2 stitches and then we knit 2 stitches, and then on the next row we knit 2 and then purl 2. So we're going to start with 2 purl stitches. So this is your left hand needle and this is your right hand needle. So you want to start with your left hand needle behind the wool that you're working with, and then you push the right hand needle into the stitch in front of the left hand needle. Then you take your wool around the right hand needle, bring the left hand needle over towards you and then slip that off the end of the left hand needle like that, and then you're going to do another purl stitch exactly the same. So you have your wool that you're working with in front of your right hand needle, you slip the right hand needle into the stitch in front of the left hand needle, you bring your wool around the right hand needle, bring the left hand needle over the top of the right needle towards you and then slip the stitch off. So now that we're going to be doing knit stitch, the first thing that you want to do is put your wool round to the back of your needle like that, and that is your first 2 purl stitches. So next we're going to be doing 2 knit stitches. So for a knit stitch you're again going to take your right needle into the stitch behind your left needle, take the wool around the right hand needle, take the left hand needle over the right hand needle away from you and then slip the stitch off like that. So I'll just show you that again. So right needle goes into the stitch behind the left needle, wool goes around the right needle, left needle over, right needle away from you, and then you slip it off. And yeah, so now you're just going to carry on with that for the whole row. So purling 2 stitches and then knitting 2 stitches, and the last 2 stitches should be purl stitches. So now that you're back to doing purl stitches, you want to bring your wool back round to the front of your right hand needle. So that is your first row done, and just to finish it off I'm going to put the wool background to the back of the needle. And as you can hopefully see, the purl stitches have these little bumps and the knit stitches don't. So if you're ever kind of getting a bit lost as to which stitch you're doing, this will help you. So that is the first row. For the second row, you're going to start by knitting 2 stitches and then purling 2. So that is your second row done. So obviously we've just done row 2, which is the one that starts with knitting 2 stitches. So our next row is going to start with purl 2. So you want to carry on until it measures around 8 inches. Obviously this is a hat, so if you would prefer to make yours a bit bigger, then carry on knitting until you get to 9 or 10 inches. If you want to make it a bit smaller, don't go as far as to 8 inches, but I think 8 inches is quite a good kind of average point roughly where you want to stop, and you want to make sure that the last row that you do is row 1, which starts and ends with 2 purl stitches. So I'll just show you both of the rows again, my next 2 rows, just so that you're really happy and confident with what it is that you're doing. So we're going to be purling 2 stitches and then knitting 2 stitches. So just like before. And then taking a wool round to the back and then knitting 2. Bring the wool to the front and purl 2. Okay, so now going on to the next row, we're going to start with 2 knit stitches and then move on to 2 purl stitches. So we knit 2, purl 2, and then just repeat that. Knit 2 and purl 2. And that is your 4th row completed. So like I said, you just want to carry on working with these 2 rows until your work measures roughly 8 inches, and the last row that you do should be row 1, which starts and finishes with 2 purl stitches. So yeah, I'm going to go away and do this off camera, and then I'll be back to show you what you do next. Okay, so it's now a little while later. My hat is now measuring at around 8 inches. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to decrease the stitches, which is how the hat curves at the top. So I've just done a row where you start and finish with 2 purl stitches. For this next row, I'm going to knit 2 stitches as normal, and then the 2 purl stitches I'm going to purl together. Starting off just with the 2 knit stitches as normal. But rather than just going into this one stitch, you're actually going to go into both of the purl stitches, and then just as you normally would, bringing the wool around that right hand needle, left needle goes over the right needle towards you, and then you slip them off. Now it is the 2 knit stitches again, so you're just going to knit those 2 as normal, and then again we are going to purl these 2 stitches together. So going into both stitches and then just continuing as you usually would. Okay, so you're going to continue with this pattern of knitting 2 and purling 2 together for the entire row, and you should finish the row with knitting 2. Okay, we're not going to be decreasing the stitches any further on the next couple of rows. So for this row, you're back to starting with the purl stitch. So this time you're going to purl 2 stitches by themselves and then knit 1 stitch. So you're purling the first 2 just as you would normally, like so. And now you're just going to knit 1 stitch rather than 2, and then purl 2. Okay, so you're just going to continue to purl 2, knit 1 for this whole row. So now for the next row, you're going to knit 2 stitches and purl 1. And again, you're just going to do that for the whole row. So it's a whole row of knit 2, purl 1. Okay, and for the next row, we're just going to do the purl 2, knit 1 again. Now we're going to continue decreasing. So for this next row, which starts with 2 knit stitches, we're going to knit them together. Just to recap, rather than just going into this first stitch, you're going to go into both stitches together and then continue your knit stitch as normal. And then you're going to purl 1 stitch. And you're going to continue this almost all the way along the row until you get to the final 2 knit stitches, and rather than knitting them together, you're just going to knit them individually as normal. So knit 1 and knit 2. So for this next row, you're going to start by purling 2 stitches. And now you're going to knit 1 stitch and purl 1 stitch. And you're just going to continue with this pattern of knit 1, purl 1 until you reach the end of the row. Okay, and now we're going to continue the decreasing of the stitches. We're almost at the end now. So for this row, we're just going to be knitting 2 stitches together for the whole row. So these first 2 stitches, knitting them together, like that. Next 2, knitting them together, and so on for the whole row. And now for this next row, you're just going to purl the whole row. So no kind of doing 2 stitches together or anything, just 1 stitch at a time, but they are all purl stitches. Okay, right, we are now on to the final row. And for this row, just once again, we're going to be knitting 2 stitches together for the whole row. Okay, so you should finish with 6 stitches still on your needle. What I'm going to do now is lay the wool up and down my work a couple of times just to make sure that I have plenty to sew the hat up with. I tend to go a little bit overboard with this bit just because I have a massive fear of running out halfway through. So just cut a little bit further along from there. And what I'm going to do with this is thread it onto my tapestry needle. And now I'm going to thread the tapestry needle through these stitches. Okay, and then once you pulled that through, you can remove your needle. And I then like to go through these loops again, just to make sure that everything's super tight. So this is the outside of your hat. You can tell because at the top it is the V's rather than the bumps. So where the bumps are, that's the inside of your hat. Now, just laying my hat out like this, I'm going to fold it so that the 2 edges meet. And before I start stitching it up, I like to get some stitch markers and place them along my work so that I know that it's going to all match up equally. The method that I'm going to be using for sewing up is mattress stitch. So there are 2 lines of V's going along here, so this is going to be where I'm going to put my stitch markers in. So starting at the very bottom of the hat, putting it into that side and into this side. This is just my preferred method of stitching it up and stuff, but if you have a different method that you prefer, then go ahead and do that. This is just what I prefer to do. Okay, so what I like to do now is go along and I count the V's. So I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then I'm going to put a stitch marker into that loop. And then on the other side, count the same. And then obviously just loop it through there and do it up. And then I'm going to count 10 again. And now we're getting closer to the top. I like to count in slightly smaller numbers. So for this next little bit, I'm just going to count 5 of the V's, and then I just like to just do a little 1, 2. Now, because of obviously at the top, not only did we decrease the stitches, but because of how we decrease the stitches, the pattern changes a little bit at the top. So that means that the top of the hat is a little bit more difficult to sew up. Once you get onto the bit where I have all my stitch markers in, it's really, really easy, but this top bit is a little bit confusing. So I'm just gonna do it without really talking too much. Because at the top, as you can see, it all kind of gets a little bit muddled, so it's quite difficult to see, but here I have a V, so I'm just gonna dig into there, find a bar, and pull that through. Okay, so we've now reached the first stitch marker, so I'm gonna take that one out. And once you get to there, then it's smooth sailing from here, because now you have your really clear lines of V's, so it's really easy. So I can now show you a little bit better where it is that you are knitting in. So our next V is this one right here. So hopefully you can see that's a V, and then I'm gonna stick my needle into the point of it and find the bar, and then just pull my wool through. And then I'm going to do the same on this side. So here we have a V, go in at the point of it, find the bar and pull that through. Okay, so the next 2 V's are the ones that are on the stitch marker. So going into the bar and on the other side. And then you can take that stitch marker out and just carry on like this all the way down. Okay, and now that we're at the bottom, I'm just going to tie these 2 in a knot. The next step after this is going to be to make the pom-poms. I like to put 2 pom-poms on my hat. If you just want to put 1, then all you need to do is just find the top of your hat. There should be this little circle. So that's the top of your hat. So that's where you want to put your bobble in. For me, as I said, I like to do 2. So what I do is I go straight down the side from there, and there's these 3 V's with a bar at the bottom. And then I go just in front of that to this V, and I'm going to put a stitch marker in there because that is where one of my pom-poms is going to go, and then I'm just going to do exactly the same on the other side. Okay, just like that. And now I'm going to turn the hat inside out, and I just like to weave the ends in a little bit and then cut them, and then you turn your hat back around the right way and flip up the cuff. So it's now time to make the pom-poms. As I already said, I'm going to be putting 2 pom-poms onto my hat, so I've already made 1, and now I'm going to make the other one and show you how I did it. So I used a pom-pom maker, which is just one of these. You can get them in all different sizes and stuff. Obviously, if you don't have one, then that's fine. You can use cardboard or other things. I will leave some links below, but for me, I'm going to be using this, and I'm using this silver sparkly wool. As I said, I will link everything below. So making pom-poms is really easy. Basically, all you're doing is you're starting with your pom-pom maker set up, and then you pop your wool onto the pom-pom maker, and then you just start wrapping the wool around. Okay, and then when you get to the end, you just go back again. So we do it one half at a time. So start with this half, and you're just going to continue wrapping your wool around it until all of this space is full of wool. Okay, so now this is all filled up, so I am going to grab my scissors and cut the end of this, like that, and now I'm going to do it all again on the other side. So now both sides are full up, we're gonna bring them together and clip. And also cut this end off. Okay, now this next bit is the tricky bit of making pom-poms. Basically, what you're gonna do is just cut all the way along here and then all the way along here. And I like to just keep hold of the clips on both sides with my middle finger and my thumb, just to make sure that everything stays really lovely and secure. So now we have cut all the way around. You want to get a bit of wool. You can use the same wool that you used to make the pom-pom, but I just prefer to use a thicker wool just because it's a bit sturdier. And then you're going to put that through the middle like that, and try and sort of make sure that these are equal, and then just tie it in a knot and make sure that you pull it really lovely and tight so that it doesn't fall apart. And then I'm just going to tie it again. And now you can remove the pom-pom maker like that, and then I just like to pull just like this, just to make sure that that's all really lovely and tight. Now at the moment it's not really very round and it's a bit kind of messy, so I'm going to just trim it down just so that it's a bit of a neater shape and matches the other one. And I like to do this into a bit of tissue so that it doesn't make too much mess. Okay, so we are now on to the final step, which is just sewing the pom-poms on. So we've got our 2 stitch markers on here to mark where our pom-poms are going to go, and you're going to need your tapestry needle. And I'm just going to get one of my pom-poms, and we have the 2 bits of wool, so I'm just going to grab one of them and thread that through my needle. And then just grabbing my hat, I put the stitch marker into one of the V's, and obviously in that V is a bar, so I'm going to put one bit of wool on one side of the bar, and then I thread the other bit onto the needle and then thread that through the other side. And now I'm going to flip my hat inside out, and I'm going to tie these into a double knot. And then flipping your hat back round the other way, and that is one pom-pom attached. So now you're just going to do the exact same thing with the other pom-pom on the other side. Okay, so both of your pom-poms are now attached, but they're quite loose still, so I'm now going to just secure them a little bit tighter. And the way that I do this is I get the ends that are left on one of my pom-poms, and I just take one of them, and then I just go into the hat and just bring the needle out near the edge of my pom-pom and pull that through. And then I'm just gonna push my needle into the pom-pom kind of in a slightly downwards motion so that it doesn't come out too high on this side. Like that. And then just pull that through, making sure that you pull it nice and tight. And then you're just going to find somewhere to then stick that back through on the other side, like that. And then you're going to grab the other extra bit of wool from the same bobble, and you're going to do basically exactly the same thing, but from the other side. So last time I put my needle through on the outside, and this time I'm going to put it on the inside. Okay, and now I'm going to flip my hat inside out again, and I'm just gonna weave these ends in and then cut them. Okay, so you can see how much more secure this pom-pom is now in comparison to this one. So now you're just gonna do exactly the same as what you did for this pom-pom with this one. And there you go, that is your hat completed. So I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and you found it helpful. If you did, please do give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And also let me know in the comments any other knitting videos that you would like to see. I will see you all again very soon with another video.